Imagine for a moment you are standing at the silent center of your own universe. Everything outside of you, every circumstance, relationship, opportunity, and obstacle is orbiting around one thing, your thought. Not fleeting opinions, not momentary wishes, but the steady, shaping power of your right thought, that persistent pattern you return to when no one is watching, when the world goes quiet. As CharlesFHaanel once taught, the world without is a reflection of the world within. The truth is elegant and inescapable. Your thought is the first cause. It is not reaction. It is not commentary. It is not passive. It is active, directive, formative. Thought opens the channel through which divine circulation flows. When the channel is clear, life moves. When the channel is blocked by fear, doubt, or mental congestion, stagnation sets in. So before we journey inward, I invite you to like and subscribe, but only if it truly resonates with your soul. Right thought is not a surface-level concept. It is not about wishful thinking or hopeful affirmations. It is about alignment, intentional, grounded, conscious alignment between your mind and the nature of universal law. Every effect you experience, whether it whispers or screams, begins not with outer action, but with inner causation. You don't fix the symptoms by treating the symptoms. You bring light to the source, and the shadows adjust on their own. When you think rightly, you open a portal, not a metaphorical one, but an actual channel of vibrational alignment through which life circulation becomes visible. You don't have to force blessings into your life. You simply stop interfering with the stream already trying to reach you. That stream responds to thought, not just scattered thoughts, but dominant, habitual, deeply seated mental patterns. This is why Haanel taught that thought is not just an influence, it is law. It does not negotiate, it does not adjust to your emotions, and it does not care whether you are aware of it or not. It operates always. The law of thought is as fixed and reliable as gravity. And just as you would not leap from a building and expect exemption from gravity, you cannot persist in distorted thinking and expect peace, clarity, or abundance to flow freely. But here is where your power lives. You are not bound to repeat old thoughts. You are not condemned to stay in the frequency of confusion or contradiction. At any moment, you can begin to think rightly, not perfectly, not instantly, but deliberately. That first decision to observe your own thinking is itself an act of circulation. It is the lifting of the internal veil. It is the beginning of flow. You may not yet believe how much power your thought holds. That's okay. It will reveal itself in time, because all transformation begins with exposure. When you shine the light of awareness upon your inner posture, you begin to see how much of your outer struggle was a mirror, not a punishment, not a test, but a mirrored consequence of misaligned thought. And the moment you see it, something changes. That change is not emotional, it is vibrational. It is the difference between guessing and knowing, between resisting and receiving. Your work, then, is not to chase after what you lack, but to cultivate the inner space where what you seek can arrive. If you want more peace, you cannot fight for it. You must think in harmony with it. If you want more prosperity, you cannot obsess over scarcity. You must think in patterns of increase. This is not denial. It is deliberate construction. You are not pretending that pain doesn't exist. You are remembering that pain is not the final truth. Thought is. Right thought opens the channel, and once that channel opens, the movement begins. Not always immediately, not always loudly, but inevitably. Divine circulation is not your invention, it is your inheritance. It's already happening. Your role is not to fabricate it, but to permit it. And permission begins in thought. The beauty of this truth is its quiet authority. You don't need to convince anyone. You don't need external permission to begin. Your very next thought can be your pivot. Your very next thought can begin to soften what has been hardened, to warm what has gone cold, to clear what has become clouded. And remember this, The channel does not require perfection. It requires purity of intention. Right thought is not always clean or poetic. It is consistent, honest, and aligned. You may stumble, but if you are moving in the right direction, the stream will pick you up. You may falter, but if you correct course in thought, the law will reorient you. It is not your strength that maintains the flow. It is your agreement with the law. So start now, not by solving every problem in your life, but by acknowledging this one power. Thought is cause. What you think with feeling, what you think with repetition, what you think with belief, that becomes form. That becomes the channel. That becomes your reality. From this place we move forward, one thought at a time, one pattern at a time, one current of circulation becoming clearer and clearer until what once felt blocked becomes beautifully, powerfully alive. You live under law, not under chance. The experiences that shape your life, whether favorable or difficult, do not drift in by accident. They are summoned, shaped, and sustained by the mental patterns you hold most consistently. This is not karma, nor cosmic roulette. It is the silent, unwavering response of universal law to the mold you provide through consciousness. The law does not interpret. It does not guess your intention. It does not weigh your worthiness. It only reflects your dominant mental atmosphere. Like a mirror, it does not argue or correct. It simply returns. It reflects what is present, not what is hoped for. And what is present in your field of thought, held long enough and deeply enough, must externalize. That is the guarantee and the challenge. The universe, then, is not responding to isolated moments of desire or flashes of hope. It is responding to the blueprint you carry consistently. If your thought is cloudy, conflicted, or divided, the manifestation will echo that ambiguity. If your thought is orderly, directed, and unified, life will respond in kind. This is not mystical. It is mechanical. CharlesFHaanel made this clear. Concentration is the key to power. The scattered mind cannot harness law. The emotionally turbulent mind cannot direct a current. The mind trained to focus, to hold a single pattern with conviction and steadiness, is the mind that begins to wield cause consciously. It is not about force. It is not about manipulation. It is about alignment. When you bring your inner state into harmony with your desired outcome, the process of circulation becomes automatic. You no longer beg the universe to deliver, you realize it already is. The only variable is what you are instructing it to deliver, and that instruction is your thought. Let this settle in. Every thought is a seed. Not all seeds sprout immediately. Some lie dormant. Some are overshadowed by stronger, more frequently repeated thoughts, but none are lost. The mind is not a garden of random growth. It is a system of organization, and the most persistent signals rise to the top. This is why a brief, hopeful thought cannot override a long-standing pattern of fear. The law must obey the signal with the strongest current. What, then, is your current mental pattern? Not what you occasionally affirm, but what you regularly feel. What story do you rehearse each day? What assumption undergirds your decisions, even the small ones? That pattern is not hidden. It is showing itself in your relationships, in your bank account, in your energy level, in your opportunities, or lack thereof. Not as punishment, but as evidence, as clarity, as feedback from the law that never sleeps. If this makes you uncomfortable, let it. Discomfort often signals proximity to truth. But don't stay in the discomfort. Move through it. Use it to locate the distortion. Use it to find where you've been misdirecting power. Not to blame yourself, but to recover your authority. Because if the law obeyed your former misalignments, it will also obey your new clarity. That is the redemptive power of this principle. This isn't about being perfect. It's about being honest. If you keep planting the same mental pattern, you cannot act surprised by the harvest. But you can plant something else today. You can replace the thought of struggle with the thought of capacity. You can exchange fear for focus. You can withdraw attention from everything draining your energy and reinvest it in what builds spiritual alignment. The more precise your inner pattern becomes, the more precise the outer response. Specificity sharpens circulation. You are not signaling the universe with noise, you are composing a transmission. And transmission requires clarity, not because the universe is fragile or picky, but because it is exact. Understand this: the law of mind is no respecter of persons. It will not bend for your emotions, your background, or your intentions. It will only reflect your consciousness. It does not ask whether you deserve love, peace, or abundance. It waits only to see whether your thought is aligned with the vibration of those outcomes. And if it is, it will deliver. Not out of sentimentality, but out of structure. It must. So if your life appears blocked, do not argue with the blockage. Do not complain to the mirror. Instead, return to the pattern. Examine it, adjust it, commit to it again and again until it becomes your default signal. And then, watch what shifts, not always instantly, not always predictably, but always accordingly. You are not trapped by fate. You are not waiting on luck. You are living inside a field of thought that you generate moment by moment. What you maintain, the universe magnifies. What you withdraw from, the universe releases. There is no mystery in this. There is only discipline, mental discipline, emotional steadiness, spiritual focus. This is the invitation. Create with the law instead of colliding with it. Construct a new internal pattern with patience and power. Hold it longer than the world tempts you to revert. Strengthen it through repetition, through clarity, through deliberate awareness. The law will follow. It always does. Clarity is not a luxury. It is power. In fact, it may be the single most valuable possession you can develop in consciousness. Not wealth, not talent, not even belief, but clarity. Because clarity is the shape that thought takes when it becomes precise enough to move the invisible into form. When you are unclear, everything in life reflects that. Your decisions hesitate. Your relationships wobble. Your results are sporadic. You find yourself reacting instead of responding, chasing instead of directing, scattered instead of aligned. Clarity cures that, not overnight, but persistently, like a lens gradually cleaned until the light shines through undistorted. Most people think their lives are unstable because of outer events. But instability is rarely rooted in circumstance. It is rooted in the vagueness of thought behind the actions. When your thinking is contradictory, when you want abundance but dwell on lack, when you desire peace but indulge in conflict, your results become fragmented. The universe cannot respond to confusion with cohesion. CharlesFHaanel reminds us that only definite thought can produce definite results. The law of mind operates with mathematical precision. It does not deal in gray areas or emotional negotiations. It mirrors the clarity or the chaos you transmit. This means that confusion is not neutral. It is causative. Every unclear intention is still an intention, and the law must respond. This is why clarity is not a moment of epiphany. It is a commitment. It is not a feeling that washes over you. It is a discipline that you uphold, especially when the world feels loud, especially when options multiply and pressure mounts. In those moments, clarity becomes a sanctuary, a north star, a command center that cuts through noise and points your mind like a compass needle toward what matters. The clearer your mind becomes, the cleaner the channel through which circulation flows. Divine supply cannot operate efficiently through indecision. You may still receive glimpses of good. You may still experience flashes of progress. But nothing stable will build on a foundation of guesswork. Thought must be organized. Intention must be coherent. Direction must be known. Clarity is not about knowing every step in advance. It is not about seeing the entire outcome. It is about being firm in the cause, even if the effect is still invisible. When you think with clarity, you stop grasping for evidence and begin walking in alignment. You stop asking, when will it show up? And start asking, Is my signal clean? And that one question recenters everything. You may be tempted to wait for clarity to arrive like a gift, but clarity must be chosen. It must be created by rejecting distractions, interrogating your own contradictions, and removing thoughts that compete with the truth you claim to want. You cannot hold two opposing mental pictures and expect progress. You cannot pray for freedom and rehearse bondage. The mind cannot serve two masters. So ask yourself, where in your thought are you still muddy? Where have you been hoping for change without declaring its shape? Where have you spoken in vague terms, more money, better days, healing, without defining the consciousness required to match those outcomes? Because that gap, that vagueness, is the crack through which your power leaks. But here's the good news. Clarity is not some elite quality reserved for the few. It is a practice, a repeatable, buildable practice. You can begin right now. You can ask yourself, what do I want to circulate? What kind of energy? What kind of relationship? What kind of provision? Then, what must I think consistently to align with that circulation? And finally, what thoughts must I release to protect that alignment? Clarity is costly, yes, but not nearly as costly as confusion. Every day spent unclear is a day spent reinforcing randomness. Every day spent in clarity is a day spent commanding the law. You are not at the mercy of your past. You are not stuck in indecision. You are simply one act of mental commitment away from turning a blurry life into a focused force. This is the spiritual edge, to stop living by default and start living by design, to trade being reactive for being radiant, to stop waiting for clarity and begin embodying it, even when the external is still catching up. You may not see the full path. That's fine. Clarity is not the whole map. It is the next correct step, taken in confidence. It is holding your pattern steady when emotions fluctuate. It is declaring your spiritual intent with such repetition that it becomes the framework of your life, not a fleeting desire. And when you live this way, cleanly, firmly, precisely, you will notice something subtle but undeniable. Things begin to move around you, not chaotically, but intelligently. Doors open, distractions fade, synchronicity sharpens, not because of magic, but because clarity removes interference from the signal. You become a transmitter of order, and the universe loves order. You are not here to dabble in vague ideals. You are here to think with power. You are here to know what you are signaling, to hold that signal with devotion, and to allow right thought to cut through the fog. That is the beginning of mastery. Clarity is power, and it is yours to practice now. You are the radiating center, not the receiver, not the echo, not the passive witness to someone else's frequency. You are the point from which thought moves outward, the center from which energy is distributed, the beginning of the pattern that becomes your experience. This is not philosophy, it is function. Every effect you see in your life is responding to the internal state you carry, consciously or unconsciously. Your environment, your finances, your relationships, your health, they are not self-contained systems. They are mirrors, turning outward what you have held inward. And the source of that radiation is you. This is why it's not enough to wish for good or even to believe in good. You must become a radiating center of it. That means you train your mind to think in the pattern of truth before evidence appears. You become the generator, not the chaser. You stop looking for proof outside and you begin broadcasting conviction from the inside. CharlesFHaanel made this clear. You do not attract what you want. You attract what you are. What you are at the level of vibration. What you are in the habitual posture of your mind. If you hold lack, lack multiplies. If you hold resentment, conflict will find you. But if you hold calm certainty, circulation obeys that frequency. If you hold joy without demand, life meets it and amplifies it. So pause, not in silence, but in awareness, and ask yourself, what am I radiating, even when I'm not speaking? What do I emit in the quiet moments, in the choices I repeat, in the tone I bring to my daily life? That unspoken signal is what instructs the law. You may think the universe is slow to respond, but it is not the speed, it is the signal. If the signal changes every day, the results will remain inconsistent. You cannot radiate peace for 5 minutes and anxiety for 5 hours and expect peace to dominate. You must hold the tone long enough for reality to tune itself to your frequency. This is why your inner environment is sacred. It is not a private space, it is a creative laboratory. The thoughts you think there do not stay there. They radiate, they enter the mental field, they begin attracting corresponding conditions, and the most consistent thought becomes the core vibration from which your entire experience will rise or fall. This is also why blame is a seduction, but not a solution. Blaming others for your condition pulls you out of your center. It convinces you that power lives elsewhere, that life happens to you, that the flow is dictated by outer forces. But the moment you accept that you are the radiating center, you reclaim every ounce of that power, not to control others, but to change the signal. It doesn't mean you caused every problem through guilt or ignorance. It means you now hold the instrument that tunes your life forward. It means you no longer have to wait for conditions to improve. You improve the tone within, and conditions begin to reflect the shift. Not always instantly, but inevitably. Because vibration is law. Your thoughts are not private, they are broadcast. They are not locked inside your skull. They vibrate out into the energetic field that surrounds and connects us all. And the universe is not deaf. It is always listening for consistency, always organizing around the most repeated signal, always sending forms to match function. When you understand this, your life becomes a reflection of what you persist in, not what you occasionally touch. If you want a life of harmony, your mental tone must echo harmony. If you want a life of clarity, you must radiate direction. If you want abundance, radiate appreciation. If you want love, become a center of openness, not need. This is not theory, it is practice. You practice becoming a radiating center by choosing your response, even when it would be easier to react, by watching your mental dialogue, even when no one else hears it, by staying with the new pattern, even when the old one tempts you back. This is the invisible work that becomes visible results. You may feel small some days, but that feeling is not the truth. The truth is this: the radiance of your thought shapes your atmosphere. You don't need a louder voice, you need a clearer signal. And the more clearly you hold your pattern, the more life organizes around it, not because you demand it, but because the law must reflect it. There is no outer flow without an inner origin. Circulation does not start with external events, it starts with thought. It starts with what you carry into the room, with what you transmit through presence, with what you embody when no one is watching. That is radiance, and it builds, moment by moment, pattern by pattern, until your life stops looking like a question mark and starts becoming an exclamation of spiritual clarity. You are the radiating center, and everything else is the return. Emotion is not a side effect of thought, it is the voltage. It is the current that energizes your mental pattern and pushes it into form. Thought alone shapes the mold, but emotion fills it with the energy necessary for manifestation. You can think 1,000 ideas in a day, but only those wrapped in feeling carry weight in the creative process. This is why idle thoughts often pass without consequence, while emotionally charged ones seem to leap into reality. The law of mind is precise, but it is also responsive to intensity, and emotion is intensity in motion. CharlesFHaanel understood this interplay. Thought provides the direction, but emotion provides the momentum. Without direction, energy disperses. Without energy, direction stalls. But when the two combine, when a clear mental pattern is infused with sincere emotional charge, a current is born. That current is circulation. This is why simply thinking positive thoughts is not enough. If those thoughts are flat, robotic, or contradicted by deep emotional unrest, they cannot penetrate the field. But when you feel your thoughts, When belief and emotion move in harmony, you broadcast a signal that the universe cannot ignore. Understand this: emotion is not the enemy. Even uncomfortable emotion, when acknowledged and understood, becomes instructive. But undisciplined emotion, left to run unchecked, tangled with scattered thought, produces static. It blocks clarity. It floods the channel. It shorts the circuit between thought and form. So your work is not to suppress feeling. It is to train it, to become emotionally intelligent in the spiritual sense, to notice what you're feeling, identify what thought is feeding it, and decide whether that thought deserves your repetition. Because when you repeat a thought with strong feeling, you're feeding it power. You're placing it on the altar of creative force and saying, yes, this. More of this. If you feed fear, fear takes root. If you nourish resentment, it deepens. But the same law applies to joy, confidence, gratitude. Feed the feeling you wish to grow, and you create inner velocity. You stop just thinking about what you want. You begin radiating toward it with real magnetic pull. Your body becomes the instrument of this radiance, not just metaphorically, literally. Emotions produce physiological shifts. Heart rate, posture, tone, presence, they all respond. And because your body is a transmitter, the emotional state you hold isn't contained within you. It ripples. People feel it. Environments adjust to it. Outcomes bend around it. This is why dwelling in negative emotion is not just exhausting, it's expensive. It costs energy. It clouds mental precision. And, most importantly, it reverses the flow of circulation. Instead of sending out a clean signal, you become entangled in reactive loops. You feed what you don't want and wonder why it grows. But again, this is not a call for denial. You are not asked to fake joy or paste over grief with platitudes. You are asked to become deliberate in how you handle emotional force. You are asked to feel what is real, to inquire where it comes from, and to redirect its power into alignment. Here's the secret. Once you identify the emotion behind your most repeated thought, you unlock the frequency. And once you control the frequency, you shape the form. Not through force, but through coherence. Thought plus emotion, when aligned, becomes command. You can command peace, not by saying it, but by feeling in its rhythm until your whole field hums with its tone. You can command abundance, not by demanding it, but by practicing the emotional equivalent of sufficiency, generosity, and freedom. You become what you seek, not because of logic, but because of vibration. And remember, you don't need emotional perfection. You need emotional alignment. You need your feelings to match your chosen pattern, not all day, not without fluctuation, but enough to make your signal stable, enough to sustain the circuit, enough to power the form. In this way, emotion becomes sacred, not an obstacle, but an amplifier. You start to see your emotional responses not as personality traits, but as spiritual indicators. They show you where your thought lives. They reveal what pattern you're broadcasting. They give you the chance to correct before consequence forms. And when you make this correction, not once but consistently, you begin to live in a different flow, a different tone. You no longer ask, why isn't it working? Because you understand. If the emotion isn't aligned, the energy isn't moving. So you realign. You choose again. You direct the current, not by force but by frequency. That's when the shift occurs, not because life suddenly becomes easy, but because you become electrically honest. Your thoughts and your emotions move in sync. The signal becomes clean. The law responds, not with delay, not with confusion, but with precision. This is the power of charged thought. This is the current behind circulation. This is how your soul begins to move the world. Resistance is not always loud. It doesn't always show up as anger or fear. Often it disguises itself as striving, as overthinking, as the subtle tightening in your chest when things don't move fast enough. It's that quiet sense of pressure you carry beneath the surface, believing that if you just push a little harder, grip a little tighter, life will finally cooperate. But here's the truth. Resistance blocks circulation. The law of mind operates through rhythm and flow, not strain and stress. Circulation is movement, intelligent, orderly, and precise. It is not forced, it is not manipulated, it is allowed. And the moment you begin to interfere with that movement by clinging, worrying, rushing, you narrow the very channel you're asking to open. CharlesFHaanel taught that harmony is the basis of all spiritual operation. When you are in harmony, thought moves freely. The pattern forms clearly. The vibration stabilizes. But when you resist, when you mentally or emotionally tense against what is, you fragment the signal. You send mixed instructions. You jam the process you're trying to initiate. You may think you're working hard to attract good. But if you're holding on to it so tightly that there's no room for it to move, you're not circulating. You're clutching. And the universe cannot fill a clenched hand. This doesn't mean you do nothing. It means your action flows from clarity, not desperation. It means your thought leads and your effort follows, not the other way around. You are not here to wrestle blessings into being. You are here to align so fully with them that they cannot help but appear. Resistance often masks itself as urgency. I need this now. I have to fix this. If it doesn't happen soon, I'm doomed. That mental tone may feel productive, but it carries the vibration of lack. And the law cannot deliver abundance on a signal of absence. If you're constantly checking the clock, counting steps, second-guessing timing, you're not trusting the flow, you're questioning it. And in that questioning, you create friction. You build heat instead of light. You interrupt the harmony that circulation depends on. So what's the alternative? Release. Not surrender as in giving up, but surrender as in letting go of the illusion of control. You control thought. You control attention. You control intention. But you do not control how the law delivers. That's not your role. Your role is to keep the channel open by staying aligned, not tense. When you truly release, something beautiful happens. Your nervous system calms. Your breath deepens. The mental noise quiets. You stop trying to pull the future into the present and start allowing the present to expand toward your vision. This is the rhythm of creation: clear thought, aligned emotion, relaxed receptivity. Resistance also shows up in expectations, especially rigid ones. You might visualize a goal, but if you become fixated on one specific outcome, one timeline, one method, you turn vision into tension. You trade inspiration for attachment. And attachment, no matter how spiritual it looks on the surface, is still resistance. Circulation doesn't demand. It allows. It doesn't chase. It attracts. You are not proving your worthiness to the universe. It's already proven. Your only job is to stop interrupting the current that is already flowing in your favor. This is what letting go means at the spiritual level. It doesn't mean disengaging from life. It means disengaging from fear. It means refusing to grip what cannot be gripped: timing, form, outcome, and instead holding fast to clarity of thought, purity of intent, and steadiness of vibration. Letting go does not weaken the signal. It purifies it. When you release resistance, your thoughts stop wobbling between trust and control. Your energy becomes smooth. Your channel becomes clean. And that's when flow becomes visible. Sometimes quietly, sometimes suddenly, but always faithfully. You don't need to scream your desires into the cosmos. You need to think them clearly, feel them fully, and release them confidently. Then you remain steady, not stagnant but anchored. You hold the tone. You don't chase the return. You let the law fulfill its part. When you live this way, life doesn't always move faster, but it moves truer. You stop wasting energy on forcing. You stop battling the current. You start riding it. And in that shift, you become the kind of person circulation can trust with more. So if things feel blocked right now, don't push harder. Ask yourself, where am I resisting? Where am I holding on too tight? Where am I confusing effort with alignment? Because where resistance ends, circulation begins. You do not have to earn divine movement. You simply have to get out of its way. The mind must be trained. It's not enough to know that thought shapes reality. It's not enough to agree with the principles of cause and circulation. Without consistent training, the mind will default into habit, into fear, into distraction. It is not naturally still. It is not naturally aligned. Left to itself, it follows the path of least resistance, chaotic, reactive, and scattered. You've likely experienced this already. You set an intention. You begin with clarity. And within a day or an hour, the mind starts to drift. Old thoughts resurface. Doubt creeps in. Mental noise returns like static, clouding the signal you were so sure of just moments before. This is not failure. This is simply the nature of an undirected mind. CharlesFHaanel taught that mental power, like physical strength, must be developed through systematic effort. You would never expect a muscle to grow without exercise. Why expect the mind to hold clarity, focus, or right thought without training? Discipline here is not punishment. It is liberation. You are not forcing the mind into submission. You are reclaiming your authority as its director. You are teaching it to obey truth, not mood. You are shifting it from being a sponge for the world's noise to being an instrument of spiritual precision. Most people don't do this because they're afraid it means restriction. But the truth is, an untrained mind is already restricted. It is reactive. It is enslaved to triggers, whims, headlines, and emotional undercurrents. Training the mind doesn't limit your freedom. It unlocks it. It gives you access to creative power with intention. Mental training begins with observation. You can't shift what you don't notice, so start watching your thought, not with judgment, but with curiosity. What tone dominates your inner conversation? What story are you rehearsing beneath your surface actions? These observations are the raw data of transformation. Then comes redirection. The moment you catch a thought that contradicts your vision, intervene, gently but firmly. Replace it. Speak a better one aloud if necessary. Write the right thought down and return to it often. This is not self-trickery. This is alignment in action. Repetition matters. One clear thought does not build a channel, it builds a ripple. But a practiced pattern, revisited daily, affirmed mentally, emotionally felt, builds a current, and that current, over time, becomes momentum. You don't force flow, you train for it, and the training is in your thinking. This is not about constant vigilance, it's about directional commitment. You don't have to micromanage every passing idea. But you must guard the gates. You must become unwilling to tolerate thoughts that contradict what you know to be spiritually true, even if they feel familiar, even if they echo your past. If they oppose your clarity, they are noise, and noise must go. One of the most powerful ways to train the mind is through focus exercises, not affirmations alone, but holding a single thought for a period of time without letting the mind drift. Haanel recommended this very practice in his Master Key lessons, holding the image of your desired condition infused with feeling, free from contradiction. Try it. Sit quietly. Hold the thought, I am a channel for divine circulation. Visualize what that looks like. Feel what it means. Notice when doubt creeps in and redirect, not once. Again and again until the thought becomes easier to hold, until it becomes a default. That is training. It's not glamorous. It's not always comfortable. But it is powerful. And over time, it changes your inner posture. You stop thinking from memory and start thinking from principle. You stop reacting and start directing. You stop waiting for life to change and begin constructing the change through thought. Training also means protecting your inputs. The mind becomes what it consumes. If you constantly feed it anxiety, noise, or contradiction, do not be surprised when it echoes those things. Your environment is not neutral. Choose your words, your company, your media, with the same care you'd give to planting a garden. Because your mind is that garden. And remember, you will fall off. You will forget. The mind will slip. That is not defeat. That is feedback. Use it. Recalibrate. Return. Training doesn't mean perfection, it means persistence. Eventually something remarkable happens. The very thoughts that once required effort become natural. The mental tone shifts. Right thought becomes your baseline, not your struggle. And when this happens, the law responds with precision. Circulation sharpens, the current clears, life begins to move, not because you willed it, but because you trained for it. You are not a victim of your thinking. You are its master in training. And with each choice, each redirection, each moment of clarity reclaimed, you prove it. There is no such thing as a neutral imagination. Every picture you hold within, whether weak or vivid, fleeting or habitual, moves outward. It shapes your emotional climate, it colors your perception, and eventually it hardens into form. The inner model becomes the outer mold. This is not poetic metaphor, it is mechanical law. CharlesFHaanel emphasized that every construct of the outer world begins as an image in mind, not just in your conscious thought, but in the deeper blueprint of belief you carry, the images you accept as reality, whether you like them or not. You are always creating, always broadcasting, always radiating a signal that instructs the law of circulation how to shape itself around you. And that instruction is visual, emotional, and deeply personal. You cannot manifest what you have not inwardly modeled, at least not consistently. You might stumble into moments of gain, but without the inner architecture to support it, it will not stay. So ask yourself, what is the model I'm holding? You may say you desire abundance, but do you see yourself as abundant? Do you feel it when you close your eyes, when no one is watching? Or does the image of struggle still dominate your inner screen? You may want love, but what is your internal model of relationship? Does it reflect mutual respect, deep joy, and expansion? Or is it shaped by past hurt, silent resentment, or guarded compromise? The law does not deliver what you say you want. It reflects what you see yourself living. And if that image is distorted, chaotic, or borrowed from someone else's story, your life will mirror that lack of clarity. But here lies your power. You can choose a new image. You can revise the inner model, not once, but repeatedly, until it becomes familiar, until it becomes true to you. This is not fantasy. This is instruction. The subconscious accepts repeated images as instruction, and the universe follows suit. You must learn to think in pictures, not just in words. If you want peace, picture the atmosphere of a peaceful life. If you want creative success, picture yourself mid-creation, focused, alive, in flow. Let the image be specific. Let it breathe. Let it override the static of unwanted memories. This is not pretending. Pretending hides from reality. Modeling constructs it. And this modeling must be emotional, not just intellectual. Dry visualization has no current. You must feel what it means to inhabit the life you're shaping. Feel the comfort of sufficiency, the spaciousness of calm, the confidence of knowing who you are. The image becomes real when emotion gives it substance. Haanel insisted that the clearer the mental picture, the quicker the materialization. Not because the universe is slow, but because we are slow to believe what we have not yet felt. When you begin to feel what you've imagined, circulation begins. The law recognizes the alignment and starts to move accordingly. Be patient with this process. The subconscious is not convinced through intensity, it is convinced through repetition. Repeating the image morning after morning, night after night, not in desperation but in devotion, is what reprograms your vibrational field. Let go of the need for immediate evidence. Focus instead on fidelity to the image. Do not trade the inner vision for temporary distraction. Do not collapse the new model because the old one yells louder. The old one will fade if you stop feeding it. Remember, the outer world is slow clay. The inner world is fire. Keep the fire steady, and the clay will take shape. You are not here to beg life for changes. You are here to construct those changes in consciousness and let life mirror your design. You are not sculpting from the outside in. You are radiating from the inside out. And your radiance is shaped by the image you hold, not once, but habitually. So build that image, refine it, infuse it with emotion, protect it from doubt, feed it with attention. And over time, you'll notice something subtle yet unshakable. The world begins to adjust around your new mold. People treat you differently. Opportunities arrive more smoothly. Patterns of difficulty begin to dissolve, not because the world changed, but because you did. This is the hidden alchemy of right thought, the power to shape the formless into form, the imagined into real. But it only works when the inner model is strong, so build with care and build with truth. Control is not circulation. To circulate divine good is not to manipulate outcomes, pressure results, or grip timelines with white knuckles. Circulation flows. It does not strain. It breathes. It does not gasp. It responds to alignment, not force. The moment you shift from conscious creation to tight control, you step out of the current and begin to obstruct what was already moving toward you. CharlesFHaanel never taught you to command the universe with demands. He taught you to understand the law, cooperate with it, and allow it to unfold its sequence through intelligent rhythm. This rhythm is not yours to dictate. You don't assign it deadlines. You don't drag it into conformity. You align, and then you trust the flow. This doesn't mean you become passive. Trust is not passivity. Trust is clarity without clenching. It is boldness without brittleness. It is moving forward without needing to know every step. It is giving your thought cleanly, directing your vibration honestly, and then allowing the divine process to complete the circuit. But the ego doesn't like that. The ego wants metrics. It wants to see hourly proof that things are working. It wants to call the shots, push the levers, and force the harvest before the roots have even taken hold. That's not circulation. That's impatience dressed as effort. Circulation flows through non-resistance. It honors order, but not rigidity. It respects direction, but not obsession. When you try to force divine movement, you're no longer moving with the law. You're fighting against it. You become the bottleneck. The law doesn't punish control. It simply pauses. When you tense, it waits. When you cling, it stills. Not out of judgment, but out of structure. Circulation requires a channel, and the channel must be open, not constricted by constant checking, doubting, or meddling. And yet, we are so conditioned to grasp. We're told to make it happen, to never let go, to hustle and fight and demand what's ours. But in spiritual law, what is truly yours is not won through struggle. It is revealed through alignment. And alignment does not beg. It does not perform. It simply radiates in truth and lets the rhythm return. You can't script how the universe responds. You can't choreograph the mechanics of manifestation. You are responsible for the tone, not the timeline. You are responsible for the vibration, not the choreography. You don't need to micromanage the how. You need to hold the what with clarity and release the rest into law. Here's what control often signals. Fear. A fear that if you don't push, nothing will happen. A fear that you've been forgotten, or that the law won't deliver unless you constantly remind it what you want. But fear is not flow. And when you transmit from fear, even subtly, you cloud the channel. Circulation requires trust in sufficiency, a deep knowing that the good already exists, and your task is not to force it into shape, but to create a container it can fill. You don't design the rain, but you can build the reservoir. You don't demand the current, you clear the stream bed and let the current find you. You've probably already seen this principle in motion. The moment you let go of something with genuine release, not manipulation, things often shift. The relationship softens, the opportunity returns, the insight arrives. Not because you gave up, but because you stopped choking the circuit. You stepped back into alignment. This is the paradox. When you stop trying to control, you start creating. Because creation flows best through open hands, open mind, and steady thought. The law needs space to circulate, not pressure to comply. You are not the manager of divine timing, you are the steward of divine clarity. The law doesn't need your hustle, it needs your alignment. It needs your willingness to stay mentally and emotionally in harmony with what you've declared, and your discipline to release it into circulation with no demand, no desperation, and no attachment to outcome. That's where the real strength is, not in controlling life, but in being so grounded in your vibration that life begins to arrange itself around you, not because you forced it, but because you tuned to it. So release the grip, hold your vision, but let go of the leash. Direct your thought, but free the outcome. Replace control with cooperation, replace strain with structure, and watch how quickly the channel clears. Circulation doesn't need your control, it needs your coherence. Gratitude is not a performance, it is alignment. It is not a tactic to trick the universe into giving you more. It is the authentic frequency of someone who already recognizes the divine movement at work, even if the results are not yet visible. Gratitude is how you lock in to flow. CharlesFHaanel understood this not as sentimental positivity, but as precision of vibration. When you are truly grateful, your thoughts, emotions, and energy synchronize into one clear signal: I already have. And that signal, when steady and real, draws more into its field, not as a reward, but as a correspondence. The universe does not reward gratitude, it resonates with it. Because gratitude affirms sufficiency, it states, without words, that circulation is already in motion, that you are not waiting, that you are not lacking, that you are not pleading or striving. You are receiving, acknowledging, and welcoming what is already true in essence, even before it appears in form. Most people use gratitude reactively, only once something good arrives. That's appreciation. Valuable, yes, but not creative. The power of proactive gratitude is different. It is spiritual leverage. It is saying, because I know this good is mine in principle, I give thanks now, not later, now. And this now is where power lives. Try it. Feel with every fiber of your being gratitude not just for what's already manifested, but for what you are becoming, for what is forming, for the invisible blessings currently aligning behind the scenes. That feeling places you in flow. It removes doubt. It softens resistance. It clears static from your mental field. But it must be sincere. Forced gratitude is hollow. Lip service doesn't move energy. If you repeat thank you while secretly doubting or resenting your current state, you're creating friction, not flow. Gratitude must come from perspective, not pressure. You must feel it because you see rightly, not because you think you should. And to see rightly, you must recognize circulation even in seed form. You must learn to honor the invisible as much as the visible. That small breakthrough, that moment of peace, that intuitive nudge, they're not minor, they're the beginnings of a shift. And when you water them with genuine thanks, they expand. Gratitude is not passive, it is directive. It keeps your mind from drifting into lack, fear, and impatience. It stabilizes your vibration. It acts as a spiritual anchor when circumstances try to shake you. It is not about pretending. It's about choosing to focus your power where it will multiply, not where it will drain. This is why the truly grounded person gives thanks in storms, not just in sun. Not to ignore reality, but to reshape it. They give thanks not because everything is perfect, but because they refuse to hand their attention to what disempowers them. They understand that gratitude is not about comfort, it's about coherence. And coherence is what keeps the channel open. You cannot receive clearly while complaining consistently. You cannot hold a vibration of abundance while whispering resentment under your breath. The law is too exact for that. It listens to your dominant tone, and gratitude must be more than words. It must become your energetic default. That's what training your mind in gratitude really means. It means interrupting the old reflexes, cynicism, bitterness, delay, and returning again and again to the truth of what already is working, however small. It means catching the light before it becomes obvious. It means celebrating reality before it fully unfolds. You don't have to fake excitement, but you must find something real to thank life for every single day, even if that something is breath, awareness, or the opportunity to redirect your thought. When you do this, not occasionally but faithfully, you become magnetic. Because gratitude sharpens perception, it doesn't just change what you feel, it changes what you see. It reveals pathways that striving would have missed. It opens conversations that force would have closed. It turns small doors into wide gates. And over time, you begin to realize you're not giving thanks for things. You're giving thanks from a place of inner sufficiency. You're no longer a beggar knocking on the door of the universe. You are a co-creator standing in rhythm with it. This shift is quiet, but it's unmistakable. It's the difference between tension and trust, between waiting and welcoming, between hoping and knowing. So don't wait for more to be grateful. Be grateful to experience more. Not because it's trendy, not because it's polite, but because gratitude is the frequency of circulation. And when you live from it, the stream widens, the return quickens, and your life begins to echo the tone of your thanks. There is a gate at the edge of every blessing, one that determines what can enter your life and what cannot. That gate is your self-image, not the way you pose for others, not the mask you wear in public, but the deep, often unspoken truth you hold about who you are and what you believe you are worthy to receive. CharlesFHaanel did not treat self-image as a psychological side note. He understood it as a spiritual mechanism, because you will never consistently experience anything beyond the identity you have inwardly accepted. You may reach for more, you may affirm higher. But if your inner self-concept says, not enough, the law must respond accordingly. The law does not override your identity. It expresses through it. Your consciousness is the gatekeeper. If you try to manifest wealth while seeing yourself as broken, undeserving, or perpetually lacking, the signal is scrambled. The vibration contradicts the image, and circulation, which depends on energetic integrity, slows or diverts. You are not punished for this contradiction. You are simply redirected back inward to clean the mirror. Self-image is not built overnight. It is shaped over time by memory, emotion, repetition, and belief. But it can be revised. You are not locked into an old version of yourself just because you've worn it for years. The mind accepts whatever it is fed most consistently. If you feed it a new image, one of capability, radiance, sufficiency, with clarity and emotion, the subconscious will respond. But that new image must feel true. Not true to your past, but true to your spiritual identity. And spiritual truth is not about history, it's about principle. You are worthy not because of what you've done, but because of what you are. You are a channel for divine circulation. That is your baseline. When you forget this, the outer world reminds you, not with cruelty, but with feedback. If you feel blocked, ask, what am I believing about myself that is keeping this from flowing? Where am I minimizing my worth, even subtly? Where am I rehearsing lack under the disguise of humility? True humility is not shrinking, it is alignment. It is seeing yourself as the law sees you, as a radiant center of expression, a rightful heir of good, not in ego, but in essence. Anything less is misalignment. Anything less is interference. Your self-image must match your vision. You cannot sustain a healthy relationship while believing you're unlovable. You cannot hold prosperity while quietly expecting loss. You cannot walk in peace while still seeing yourself as chaotic. The law will only build on what you have claimed as identity. So what do you claim? Many people try to fix their outer lives without adjusting their inner self-concept. They chase circumstances without transforming the lens through which they interpret those circumstances. But that lens, your self-image, is the filter through which all life passes. If the lens is distorted, everything you see will be too. Changing self-image is not vanity. It is clarity. It is deciding once and for all that you are done rehearsing limitation, done aligning with inherited doubt, done apologizing for wanting more. It is no longer playing small just because others expect it. It is standing in your rightful mental posture, not to dominate, but to receive without contradiction. This takes honesty. It takes attention. It takes mental discipline. But it is worth everything, because once you install a new self-image, you don't need to chase change. It finds you. Life adjusts to meet the version of you that you consistently inhabit. And if you stumble back into old stories, that's okay. The difference now is that you notice, you correct, you return, you refuse to let the old mold dictate your current vibration. This is how you grow, not by rejecting who you were, but by updating who you are in alignment with truth. So ask yourself, if I were already the person who embodied circulation, clarity, and calm power, what would I no longer tolerate? What thoughts would I stop feeding? What choices would I make, not from fear, but from sufficiency? Then live from that. Not one day, not when it's convenient, but now. Because when your self-image is aligned with divine law, you become the gate through which all good flows, unobstructed, unapologetic, and free. Purity of thought is not about moral perfection, it is about energetic coherence. If your mind is crowded with contradictions, the law has no clear signal to respond to. Circulation requires clarity, and clarity cannot exist in a field of mixed instructions. CharlesFHaanel was unambiguous. If you attempt to hold two opposing thoughts, one of abundance and one of fear, one of strength and one of doubt, you do not split the result evenly. You neutralize the process. You jam the mechanism. The law is exact, and it cannot deliver a consistent outcome from an inconsistent cause. So what does it mean to purify your thought? It means to strip away the clutter, to stop rehearsing exceptions, to stop watering weeds while expecting fruit. It means becoming intolerant of internal conflict, not out of self-judgment, but out of devotion to alignment. Purity is not about never feeling fear or never thinking a doubtful thought. It is about refusing to let those thoughts set up residence. You may notice them. You may even hear their old arguments echo in your mind. But you don't engage. You don't explain yourself to them. You return to clarity. You return to right thought. You stay with the mental image you've chosen, the clear, vivid, emotionally resonant pattern. And you don't dilute it with doubt. That's purity, not sterility, not rigidity, just consistency without contradiction. This is spiritual maturity, to know when your thought is being pulled in opposite directions, and to choose deliberately which one you will empower. Not through force, through attention, because what you feed grows. And here's where many seekers falter. They say the right words while holding the wrong charge. They affirm prosperity while emotionally vibrating with anxiety. They visualize love while inwardly bracing for betrayal. And they wonder why nothing shifts. The answer is simple. The signal is polluted. The law cannot deliver to a divided mind. Circulation slows not because the universe is broken, but because the channel is jammed. You don't need more effort. You need mental hygiene. You need to clean the thought stream until it runs clear. You can begin this today. Start by auditing the patterns. What thoughts dominate your inner landscape? Are they aligned with the life you claim to want? Or are they secretly canceling out your clarity? Be ruthless here, not in a cruel way, but in a loving, corrective way. If a thought does not belong to your chosen frequency, evict it. If a belief contradicts your vision, release it. If a memory hijacks your attention and rewrites your vibration in old tones, interrupt it. Purity of thought is about protection. Protecting the seed you've planted from weeds. Protecting the current of creation from static. Not because you're fragile, but because the process is exact. Even science confirms this. A signal distorted by interference cannot produce a reliable transmission. The spiritual realm functions the same way. If you want a clean return, send a clean signal. This is where your practice deepens. When the old voice whispers, "But what if it doesn't work?" you reply, "It's already working because I'm no longer thinking in contradiction." When fear says, "Protect yourself with backup plans," you reply, "I protect myself with clarity and alignment." Not to shut down the mind, but to retrain it. You begin to live with mental loyalty, to truth, not to habit. You no longer indulge thought patterns that betray your identity. You don't visit scarcity just because it's familiar. You don't flirt with doubt just because it used to feel safe. And in this loyalty, your vibration stabilizes, circulation increases. The law, no longer confused, begins to mirror you with sharpness, with accuracy, with speed. Purity of thought is not always easy, but it is always powerful. It removes friction, it accelerates alignment, it sharpens intention, and perhaps most importantly, it creates internal peace, because nothing drains the soul like spiritual contradiction. So be clear, be honest, be pure, not in some abstract ideal, but in the very real sense of unified direction. When your thought is whole, your life becomes focused. When your mind is clean, your channel flows freely. When your inner world no longer splits itself in two, your outer world responds in kind. Circulation requires this, and you are ready for it. Nothing flows through a closed system. And in spiritual law, giving is what opens the system. It is not loss. It is not sacrifice. It is participation in the rhythm of divine circulation. The degree to which life flows through you is directly related to how freely you allow it to flow from you. CharlesFHaanel was explicit about this. To receive, you must give, not as an obligation, but as a principle. Life circulates. Stagnation is not a punishment. It is a sign that the flow has been interrupted, and the interruption almost always begins when we start hoarding, withholding, or pulling back in fear. Giving is not just money. It is attention, presence, energy, encouragement, generosity of thought, willingness to uplift. These are not small things. They are the very substance of vibration. When you give these freely, you expand the container through which good can return, not because you earned it, but because you became large enough to hold it. People often misunderstand this and turn giving into a strategy. If I give, I'll get. That's not circulation, that's transaction. And the universe does not operate on manipulation, it operates on match. If your giving is infused with fear or hidden demand, the signal is mixed. But when your giving is clean, when it comes from sufficiency, it amplifies your frequency. You can test this. The moment you feel stuck, the moment you feel life tightening around you, ask, where am I holding back? Not just with resources, but with spirit. Where have I stopped contributing? Where have I made my energy smaller? Where have I refused to offer what I have, waiting instead to be filled first? That waiting position is not neutral. It is a signal, and the law hears it. I do not yet have enough. So it echoes that vibration. Giving breaks that echo, not recklessly, not to perform worth, but to restore movement. You give from clarity, not confusion. You give from your center, not to gain favor or avoid guilt. You give because you understand this. What flows through you grows in you. This applies to every field of life. In relationships, when you withhold affection out of fear of being hurt, the connection hardens. But when you give love from strength, not from need, you create safety, resonance, and depth. In creativity, when you hoard your ideas until they're perfect, they stagnate. But when you share, teach, release, your capacity increases. Insight returns multiplied. The act of giving sharpens your channel. Even in finances, the same law applies. When you grip every coin with anxiety, you signal scarcity. You choke the flow. But when you give deliberately, with respect and belief in circulation, you confirm your own sufficiency, and that confirmation attracts more. Again, this is not moralism, it's mechanics. Circulation moves where there's space. Giving creates that space. Giving is not depletion, it is expansion. You are not less for giving, you are larger. But the giving must come from the right consciousness. If you give with resentment, fear, or as a way to prove your goodness, you distort the signal. If you give with joy, focus, and alignment, you energize the very pattern you want to multiply. And here's something most people miss. Receiving is also a form of giving. To receive openly is to give life the satisfaction of completing a cycle. If you reject good out of false humility or guilt, you block the flow. You must be just as generous in your receiving as you are in your offering. Because both complete the loop, so let the loop move. Give your attention to what builds, not what drains. Give your voice to what uplifts, not what criticizes. Give your time to what deepens you, not just what distracts you. And when appropriate, yes, give your resources. But always give with clarity, never from fear. The law does not bless suffering, it blesses alignment. The more you give rightly, the more life trusts you with return, not out of morality, out of readiness. You have shown the law that you understand its rhythm, that you are not a dead end, that you are a conduit, and through such conduits the universe loves to flow. There is a kind of wealth that cannot be measured in accounts, a kind of influence that does not come from status. It is the wealth of consciousness, the inner awareness of source, sufficiency, and creative power. This is the real currency. All outer effects, money, relationships, opportunities, are merely extensions of this inner substance. CharlesFHaanel taught that supply does not come from outside, it comes through you. Not because you are the source, but because you are the open channel through which the source expresses. And when that channel is clear, life moves, circulation increases, outer forms adjust. But when you mistake the form for the source, when you idolize money, obsess over outcomes, or chase security in things, you reverse the flow. You give power to shadows. You forget that everything visible is an echo of consciousness, and that the echo fades unless it is renewed from within. This is the shift, from reacting to life to radiating into life, from chasing things to embodying vibration. You stop trying to get and start understanding what you are already giving off, energetically, mentally, emotionally. Consciousness is not a background concept, it is first cause. It is the field in which all things are formed and sustained. The person who knows this moves differently. They are not frantic, they are not easily shaken. Their power does not depend on who hires them, praises them, or pays them. Their power comes from what they hold inwardly as truth, and that truth organizes their life. This is why two people can walk into the same room, face the same conditions, and leave with radically different outcomes. It is not about luck. It is not about effort alone. It is about consciousness, what they carried into that room, what they radiated, what the law detected and mirrored back. You've likely seen this. Someone who should succeed never gains traction. Another who seems effortlessly in flow keeps receiving. The difference is not personality, it's frequency. One is broadcasting clarity, the other is scrambling the signal with fear or contradiction. And here is the part most people ignore. You cannot fake consciousness. You cannot paste affirmations over a fractured identity and expect clean results. The law responds to your dominant vibration, not your temporary mood. It reflects the depth, not the decoration. This is why your inner state is worth more than your resume, why your thought atmosphere is more powerful than your calendar, why your self-concept is more potent than your to-do list, because these inner elements form the invisible infrastructure of your life, and they speak louder than any words. Money, when rightly understood, is just a symbol, useful but neutral. It amplifies your state, it responds to your state, it reflects your state. If you try to gain it while holding scarcity in mind, it slips through your fingers. If you receive it with alignment and clarity, it flows and expands, not just in quantity, but in quality. The same is true for time, for health, for creative power. These are mirrors, not sources. They bend to match what you think, feel, and expect most often. So ask yourself, what am I using as currency right now? Is it anxiety, doubt, control? Or is it confidence, sufficiency, awareness? Because consciousness spends itself in every conversation, in every decision, in every moment. And what you spend returns in kind. To shift your outer life, shift the currency you use. Train your mind to transact in clarity. Spend focus, not fear. Offer presence, not performance. Pay attention to what builds instead of reacting to what drains. These are not abstract changes. They are structural. They change what you see, what you attract, what you retain. And they don't require external permission. You don't need the world to shift first. You don't need validation. You need only to own your frequency, to take responsibility for what you're radiating, and to refuse to buy into falsehoods about limitation and lack. Because once you realize that consciousness is the real currency, you stop asking for scraps. You stop bargaining with your power. You start commanding your field, not through force, but through fidelity to truth. And in that fidelity, circulation expands. Not because you finally did the right ritual, but because you stopped broadcasting confusion. You remembered that you are the cause, not the echo. You remembered that the highest form of wealth is a mind aligned with truth. That is spiritual solvency. That is creative maturity. That is the only currency that never runs out. You are not waiting on miracles. You are becoming one. Not because you are flawless, not because life has handed you every advantage, but because you have chosen again and again to think rightly, to bring thought into alignment with divine law, to train your consciousness toward clarity, and to radiate from truth rather than reaction. This is the responsibility of radiance. CharlesFHaanel never spoke of spiritual growth as passive. He didn't present circulation as luck or metaphysical fantasy. He made it unmistakably clear: consciousness creates, and what you maintain in thought becomes what you experience in form. That truth is both liberating and sobering, because once you know it, you are accountable for what you continue to think. You can no longer plead ignorance. You can no longer blame the past or point at others for the delay. You must own your signal. You must take responsibility not just for your actions, but for your mental atmosphere. Because the law doesn't hear your words, it hears your tone. It sees what you consistently believe, not what you momentarily affirm. This is why radiance requires responsibility. You cannot think in contradiction and circulate clearly. You cannot project weakness inward and expect strength to reflect outward. You cannot treat your mind as a dumping ground and expect your life to be a garden. Responsibility is not about burden, it is about conscious authority. You are not a bystander in your own life. You are the radiating center. You are the instruction point for the law. You are the living interface through which spirit expresses itself into form. And this is not a power to fear. It is a power to honor. It means that every moment, every mental shift, every choice to return to clarity is a creative act. You're not just surviving life. You are sculpting it from within. You are guiding the current of circulation not by willpower, but by purity, consistency, and emotional integrity. Radiance is not a feeling, it is a frequency. It is not about being cheerful or loud or charismatic. It is about being clear. It is about becoming a vessel through which divine movement can happen without resistance. It is about being a channel so open, so stable, so honest, that the universe flows through you with ease. But that level of openness requires responsibility. You must clean what clouds you. You must correct what collapses you. You must refuse to indulge the mental habits that dim your field. Because everything you do mentally is either reinforcing your clarity or leaking your power. And when you leak, the law does not scold you. It simply pauses. It waits. It reflects your internal tone with merciless accuracy, not as punishment, as invitation, to come back, to reset, to choose again. So choose now, not later, not when circumstances feel better, not when fear lets go of its grip. Choose now to think as the creator you are. Choose now to walk as the radiant soul you were built to be. Choose now to hold thoughts that amplify your power, not diminish it. You are not a mistake. You are not random. You are not behind. You are a center of divine expression. You are a current in the vast ocean of circulation. And your thinking is how that current moves through you, cleanly, purely, and with purpose. When you think rightly, you align with the rhythm of life itself. And life does not struggle. It does not strain. It moves with grace, precision, and unfailing order. Radiance is your nature. Responsibility is your task. And when the two meet, the miraculous becomes inevitable. So now we rest, not in passivity, but in peace. You have journeyed through layers of thought, truth, and power. You've seen how the invisible becomes visible, how the patterns you hold quietly, privately, unceasingly, become the outcomes you live. Let that truth settle, not as pressure, but as permission. You don't need to race anymore. You don't need to prove anything. You simply need to return to clarity again and again until clarity becomes your default, your practice, your vibration. Life is not waiting to bless you. It is waiting to mirror you. You have the tools now. You have the map. You understand that right thought is not a ritual. It is rhythm. Not occasional effort, but constant tone. Not noise, but signal. And as that signal becomes pure, circulation becomes smooth. So breathe deeply now. Let the truths you've heard settle in your nervous system. Let your body exhale the effort. Let your soul lean back into its remembering. You are already enough. You are already aligned. You are already in motion with the divine. There is nothing left to strive for, only radiance to allow. So now we rest, not in passivity, but in peace. You have journeyed through layers of thought, truth, and power. You've seen how the invisible becomes visible, how the patterns you hold quietly, privately, unceasingly become the outcomes you live. Let that truth settle, not as pressure, but as permission. You don't need to race anymore. You don't need to prove anything. You simply need to return to clarity again and again until clarity becomes your default, your practice, your vibration. Life is not waiting to bless you. It is waiting to mirror you. You have the tools now. You have the map. You understand that right thought is not a ritual. It is rhythm, not occasional effort, but constant tone, not noise, but signal. And as that signal becomes pure, circulation becomes smooth. So breathe deeply now. Let the truths you've heard settle in your nervous system. Let your body exhale the effort. Let your soul lean back into its remembering. You are already enough. You are already aligned. You are already in motion with the divine. There is nothing left to strive for, only radiance to allow, only responsibility to carry, with grace, not weight, with calm, not control, with clarity, not confusion. You are not separate from the stream. You are the stream, and now it flows.